Hello and welcome to An Epic World brought to you by Quadrian. I'm your host, Courtney Fingar, and this is our interview series that highlights innovators, thought leaders, and trailblazers driving transformational innovation in industries and economies worldwide. Quadrian is focused on inspiring epic growth by leveraging the combined forces of venture investment, foreign direct investment, and special economic zones. As part of this mission, Quadrian supports innovative founder led startups as they scale up globally. Now, one of these inspirational founders is Henry Emson, founder of the Great Reserve, which is on an epic mission itself to plant and protect the planet's most powerful carbon capture tree, the Giant Sequoia. Henry, welcome.
Lovely to be here with you, Courtney.
Well, thank you very much for your time. Now, first of all, just tell us about the Great Reserve. What's it all about, and how did the concept and idea come about?
Sure. The concept came about early on for me when I was thinking about carbon offsetting for my children, and I was looking at different tree species to plant for them to get a head start on their footprint. And I came across this interesting paper released about giant sequoias in their native habitat in California and how much carbon they were capturing. And incredibly, the largest tree on the planet, General Sherman, which is a giant sequoia, had captured 1,400 tons of CO2 in its lifetime. And that's a lot of carbon. And I sort of questioned how that might relate to the lifetime footprint of a person, a human being on this planet, and learnt that your average footprint, certainly of a sort of European Brit, is around 500 tons a year and actually diminishing now. That's getting smaller over time as we get more efficient. And so I sort of thought, crikey, that's nearly three people's lifetime in one tree. That's incredible. I should plant some for my kids. And then I researched whether we could plant them in the United Kingdom because I had some land that I was lining up to do this with. And I started learning about this wonderful tree being brought over here by the Victorians in the 1850s, and they've thrived. They're not typically planted for any timber harvesting value. They're normally sort of monument trees that are planted outside stately homes of the aristocracy of past. And they're still around today. These trees can live for 3,500 years. So to be 170 years old today, they're still teenagers, really. They're nothing like the size of the old ones in California. But it sort of got me on the journey, got me taking action. So I planted a few for my kids, and then that sort of got um, heard of by friends and family. They wanted a giant sequoia as well, planted in their name, to sort of account for their lifetime carbon footprint. And then the environmental editor of the Times, Ben Webster, heard about what I was doing and put a big page spread up about the giant sequoias being planted in the United Kingdom. And the phone just didn't stop ringing. Before I knew it, I had to find space to plant 500 of them. And that quickly escalated as well because then we got on the BBC, PBS, Fox News, all sorts of media channels heard about what we were up to, and it was a fun story. And so quite quickly we started needing to buy bigger plots of land, planting more redwoods. And yeah, that was the genesis of it, and it's been a fantastic and wonderful and fulfilling journey since.
So, how many trees have you planted so far?
That's giant sequoias. We're at about 2,000, but just trees in general that surround the redwoods we plant. We plant three native trees for every giant sequoia and about 17 to 20 other trees that act as nurse crop trees, which protect them from things like wind and frost. So about 2,000 giant sequoias, about 40,000 other trees to date.
Amazing. And are they scattered all around the country?
So we're not looking at yeah, I mean this is so essentially a big part of our journey was meeting a charity in the US called the Archangel Ancient Tree Archive. And they have been looking to protect these trees, the old native Californian redwoods, for some time now. A guy called David Milarch actually runs the operation there. And what we learned from them is that they're dying in America, in their native habitat. They're losing about 10% of their numbers every year, which is a very rapid rate of loss. And so he was encouraging us to think about this as an opportunity to create a new territory for these trees to survive. So in California, we've all heard about the wildfires, most recently in LA City, which was obviously a shocking event. But previous to that, up in the mountains, the Sierra Nevada mountains, where these old redwoods live. And yes, like I said, he was encouraging us to think about new habitat for these trees. And the UK is a fantastic place to grow them. We've got ample evidence that they've done very well over here already, from the ones that were brought over by the Victorians. And so, with something called assisted migration, we've been planting them in the UK to really create a safe haven for their future. Essentially, they're climate refugees from their native habitat. And this is an opportunity to give them a life raft for the species in a territory where we get plenty of rainfall here, obviously. People always talk about the English weather, most of all the English or the British. Um, and plenty of rainfall. We have not the kind, we don't have the same threat from bark beetle, and there's no wildfires typically. So this is a great location for them to be finding a new space for them to thrive. And really, the issue in California at the moment, as is quite well reported, is you've got a combination of drought, which puts a lot of stress on the trees. That actually weakens their immune response to things like bark beetle. It makes the trees drier and more likely to burn. And then you've got a buildup of forest debris on the forest floors from actually years of fire suppression, which means that you've got hotter temperatures, drier wood, um, and drought. So basically, we've got a sort of perfect situation for these fires to get to a status called superheater wildfires, and that can actually kill the old redwoods. And so in the UK, obviously none of those threats exist, and so we've got an opportunity to basically create like a life raft for these trees in a new territory. And that's what the Great Reserve is, really, in a nutshell.
Yeah, the idea of the trees being climate refugees is fascinating, but I guess that's exactly what it is.
Yeah, I mean, there's to put it in context, there's only about 70,000 old redwoods left in the US, which in tree terms is a very small number. Um, and so, what we're actually doing here in the United Kingdom and predominantly in Wales at the moment is we are planting 100,000 of them, and that is going to replicate what's left in the US and be the sort of, as I said, that's going to be the opportunity for them to thrive in a separate, safer location. And really, anywhere on the west coast of the United Kingdom where there's a meter or rainfall or more is a viable site, provided it's got the right soils and other microclimate. And we aren't actually putting them all in one place. We're trying to disperse the groves so that there's no risk to one single location.
Mhm. And speaking actually of different locations, do you have any plans to take this model to other countries, or are you just focused on the UK for the moment?
No, we will in time. This is a non-native species to the United Kingdom. It is actually oddly in our fossil record, from the sort of pre-Ice Age times, and some believe that that's why the coal seams in Wales are so thick. It's because it's all sequoia forests. Um, but they are today non-native, and so we don't want to have them overplanted here because obviously there's a big drive at the moment to support native woodlands and old growth forests. We only plant them on previously felled monoculture timber plantations, which is key, because it has the minimal impact on the local ecology, typically replacing a Douglas fir, for example, which is another North American conifer. Um, but yeah, we would then, I think, when we've completed our mission in the United Kingdom, we would look at other territories and other countries where this was viable. The main statistic is, this is the world's pretty much one of the longest living tree species on the planet. They represent some of the oldest organisms alive today on our planet as well. But they're the fastest growing conifer in the right conditions. And so we've got this very fast growing, extremely large, capable tree, that goes on living for thousands of years. And from a carbon capture point of view, that's about as valuable as you can get because we're all facing that same issue. And what I think is critical in that discussion is around how much carbon can you capture in, say, 10 hectares of land. And if you compare a sequoia forest versus a native woodland in the UK, it's about 10 times more carbon in 100 years, which is a hugely powerful statistic. And if you think the one commodity we have in shortest supply for addressing this issue is actually land, or land that's contributed by landowners for a cause that's not for timber harvesting or um, some other purpose. That's the pinch point, right? We don't have enough land. And so what's happening with the sequoia forests as we're growing is we're creating an incredibly efficient carbon stacking tree species per hectare. And so I do think it's valuable to think about a wider distribution globally, because we're not going to find a more capable tree for carbon capture where it's locked up for a long time that can put that much carbon into a certain amount of space.
Mhm. And what's the kind of, I guess, business model, as it were, behind it? Who's how's it being funded? Who's paying whom, and in what way?
Yeah, sure. So at the moment, it's just a standard UK limited company. Um, Everybody that works in the business is doing it pro bono. So my co-directors, none of us take any salaries out of the business, and we're doing this because we believe in the project, we believe in the mission. I have other roles that I do for supporting my life and my children, etc. So this is very much part of our contribution, really, as we see it, to the environment and taking action and actually doing something. There's a lot of discussion around climate change. I just really wanted to do something and make an impact. And these trees, these sequoias, have led me down a journey that's been incredibly rewarding. Planting sequoia trees with families and children and companies. These trees are going to live as far into the future as the Roman Empire was in the past. It's an extraordinary concept, um, and I find that it really brings people alive and makes for a fantastic experience when we invite people to come and plant their sequoia trees on our land.
So it's very much a passion project.
It is a entirely a passion project, no question. I've always felt like this has been a privilege to be have it as part of my life and a sort of calling. And I can honestly say that when my time is up, if I can look back and say that I've put together 100,000 giant sequoia trees with the people that have supported us, then I will be, I will certainly consider that a life well lived. But a little bit more on your question about how we fund it. The answer is we invite individuals to buy a sequoia tree to have it planted on our forest, and then they get the GPS coordinates of the tree and they can come and plant it themselves, roll their sleeves up, get their hands dirty. It's a wonderful experience. And then we also invite corporates who are looking at doing carbon offsets to uh, essentially fund or buy carbon credits from us, which are audited and verified by the Forestry Stewardship Council. Um, and then they have the opportunity to basically do their carbon offsets using sequoia trees, sequoia carbon, which is about as interesting and as alternative and as powerful as I think you can get, really, because in a world where carbon credits are kind of a little bit smoke and mirrors, people don't feel very confident. I think the opportunity to come and plant your sequoia tree, get the GPS coordinates, and then we run LiDAR scans every 5 years to tell you how much carbon's grown in your tree. That's about as transparent and as connected as you can get to your project. And it takes away all of the question marks about impact which people have, and yield loss. Like, for example, if any of the sequoias in our groves fail, we guarantee it, so we replace it. This is a species protection program first and foremost. And so if a sequoia fails, we'll plant another one in its place. And that's 100%, um, sorry, that's a 0% yield loss on all of the carbon we're growing. So for a company, that's pretty compelling. They get to see the site, plant the tree, get the GPS coordinates, and have LiDAR scans telling them how much carbon's grown per tree in their grove. That's definitely sort of sweeping away a lot of the um, areas where people have lost confidence in other carbon products in the past.
And I noticed on your website you have some pretty substantial, well-known companies that are supporting you, like British Airways and others. So are you happy with the level of corporate, I guess, partnership that you've found so far?
Absolutely. I mean, like everything, it starts small and it slowly builds. And so we've been on this journey now for nearly 8 years. And where we are today with the partners we've got, for example, Tree Economy doing the carbon calculations on the trees and drone scans, with the FSC, one of the world's largest forestry organizations, verifying and auditing our carbon. Each of those things has kind of come in steps, and as we keep on layering on better quality, reporting and third party reviewers and auditors, we bring in more confidence to the clients, and that means we can get bigger companies. But the sort of last 2 years for us, which saw Forest e-bikes, which is the London e-bike company, come in and um, do their own grove. We had Laithwaites, one of the largest wine producers and distributors in the United Kingdom. They did their own grove. And then more recently, British Airways, which is really as big a name as we could ever hope for. Um, we're certainly getting on the map for companies that want to do some offsetting. And I think the real appeal is quite straightforward. I think most people are looking at carbon offsets in foreign territories, in faraway lands. It's incredibly difficult for them to really get a handle on how real that is and the quality of it. I mean, you only have to look at the Vera statements, sorry, the Guardian article on the Vera credits that were rainforest credits where they said that 96% of them were going to have no impact at all. You can see why companies would want to associate and work with someone like us, where it's quite literally um, them coming up a hill, rolling their sleeves up, planting, 2 hours from their headquarters, and then getting the coordinates of each tree that their carbon's grown in. I mean, it's incredibly easy to track and stay on top of. So yeah, and hopefully we're just at the beginning of this journey. We want to be working with many more companies, and we've done 2,000 Sequoias. We're looking to do 100,000. So we've got a long way to go.
Okay, good. You took my next question about what your goals are for the next phase, and it's easy to see that it is something quite tangible, traceable, transparent, which is, as you mentioned, a gap in this field. Before we wrap up, I'd love you to tell us a little bit about your relationship with Quadrian. What kind of support are you receiving? How did that come about? And what are your ambitions for that partnership?
Sure. So um, Kareem, who is one of the founders of Quadrian, is the person that I've been fortunate enough to be closest to. Um, very much my experience of the work that he's doing is that he's across the world running various projects, working with lots of multinational corporations and talking to lots of interesting people across all aspects really, and all geographies. And so, working with Quadrian for us, the opportunity is to think about getting the message out about what we're doing, really, to further afield areas. Because, quite frankly, um, saving the old redwood forests. I mean, everybody pretty much knows what a redwood is or has at some point been to Sequoia National Park, so it's a passionate concept for most. Um, it's an opportunity for us to get our message out to parts of the world where we've got no representation. And I know Kareem does a good job of talking about what we're up to. It's a real pleasure and for us to be on this podcast with you to try and spread the word essentially. And I feel like over time, hopefully, we can give something back as well. So with the contacts that we're developing, I know that they've got a large interest in things like edtech, and hopefully we can find ways to make it uh, more viable and more commercially interesting for Quadrian over time as well, because obviously they've got interests as well. Um, and I think some of the sponsors that work with us would probably be interesting parties for some of the more educational orientated work that they do.
Absolutely. I think it can definitely be a mutually beneficial collaboration. I look forward to working with you also through my role as a senior advisor for Quadrian. Henry, thank you so much for telling about this incredibly interesting project and very worthwhile project. And we wish you best of luck as you move towards your targets of more and more trees. And we look forward to helping tell your story as we go forward. And thanks to you all for tuning in to this episode of An Epic World. Join us next time to see where we take you on a tour of innovation hotspots and innovators all around the globe. Thank you.
Thanks, Courtney.